All right. Welcome everyone again to the podcast. I'm here with Natalia. Um, I'm here with Natalia today, and I'll just let you introduce yourself for everyone here.
Hi, Cameron. Thank you for having me in the podcast. I'm very grateful for being here. Yeah, my name is Natalia. I am from Colombia. When I was 18 years old, I moved to Canada, and I miss it every day. but I'm right now living in Kingston, and yeah, that's a bit about me.
Well, I just wanted to start on a personal level. Just say welcome to Canada. You're
Mhm.
always welcome here. We're glad to have you. We're glad that you decided to move here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been um, an experience with a lot of emotions, I have to say, but I'm very glad I made that decision with my family. So yeah, right now I'm
Oh,
studying at Queens, I think.
oh, nice. At Queen's University. If I may ask, what are you studying?
I am studying to become a teacher. Right now, first year is a bit of a base year where you study a bit of everything, and then in second year you choose what you're going to study. But my main goal is being a teacher. Yes.
Nice. No, that's great. Um, so I sort of think we need to start this conversation where can you explain how you got involved with the You Take Charge survey and the infographic that was created?
Yes, it was during the pandemic. Um, I was doing my 12th year, I think, in high school in Windsor. And I remember that I wanted to become a bit more involved in the community. I remember that when I came here, I received a lot of help from a lot of people from my school, from teachers, the principal, the guidance. So yeah, I wanted to become a bit more involved. And I remember the principal of the school mentioning that there was a group of youth people that were trying to meet and do some changes and change projects. So I thought it sounded interesting. I decided to join. I remember the first meeting was a bit of, again, a lot of different emotions because I think during the pandemic, um, it was hard for a lot of students, right? And for me, it was the social part that that it was a challenge for me then. So meeting with new people, with a lot of new things, it was exciting, but also like nerve wracking. But I met with them. I had the first meeting. I got very engaged with how passionate they were about what they were doing, and I think they share it with me. They like um, contage me with that passion, if that's a word. But yeah, so then I after a couple meetings, they told us about the change project. We decided to do it on employment, on the barriers and challenges around employment for people with and without disabilities. And yeah, that's how it started. Uh, I don't know if you want me to go the full on the survey and everything like that. Of if that's enough.
Um, yeah, I kind of want to know what were the learning outcomes from it. What were the results behind this survey? What did you learn?
um. Uh. Okay, I think that's a great question. So the very first thing for us as a group was try to communicate our ideas in the best possible way so that each of us could have their voices heard, but also understand and try to all of our ideas coming together. Uh, so that was the first thing, like learning to work in a team. Um, then when we've managed to finish the survey and we're proud of it and managed to had some people filling it out, um, we started to notice how important that topic was for people. I think uh, for students and for teachers, I think. And um, I also think that one of the things I learned was how powerful it can be. I never imagined, it never crossed my mind that we will still be talking about a change project that I did almost 2 years ago with someone else, right, outside. So I think if more youth people will realize the impact their voices will have, we will have a lot more change project and a lot more of this change that we want to see. Um, and then we also had a lot of um, um, learning opportunities with the barriers around employment, the things that youth in particular think are barriers for them when entering a workplace or a co-op placement. And then we also got some inputs on the teacher's side of it and the employer's side of it, a bit of their experience and why they think it is important to have a more inclusive process, hiring process, and what do they think are the barriers for youth. Yeah.
So just to help me understand, were the results overall then found within the study overall? Did people find they had a positive experience or a negative experience when it came to these topics?
um it was interesting because we did it from like high school experience. 60 I remember 60% of high school students thought it was very hard for them to find a job. So almost like more than the half. So we will say it was a negative experience, right? But then in post-secondary students, it was like 45 that said it's hard for them. So it's interesting how you see like education changes a bit the barrier and also the age range. The that I don't know, more experience, more education, more that may reduce the barrier. But I think overall we are in a good place. I That's what my that's the uh yeah, the overall result I felt the survey gave. Yeah.
Well, that's a huge discrepancy. 45%, 60% in high school, 60%, and 45% post-secondary. That's a huge gap. I kind of want to talk a bit more about that. Like when we talk about that with the age gap, and we talk about like high school job versus post-secondary job. Typically, there's not as many high school jobs. I like going when I was in high school. I found that there weren't many high school jobs, and I couldn't really do a job while doing high school as an autistic person because there would have been too much. I did end up getting like a part-time job near the end of high school, and I'm super grateful for it. Great people, great overall experience. They liked having me there. I liked working. Um, Honestly, just great overall. And but if it wasn't for me reaching out, sort of having to go through a program sort of to find that job, I wouldn't have gotten that job. And so, what do you think, in terms of high school, employers could do to try and improve that accessibility and try and have more job opportunities that are flexible for those who can't really focus on doing courses and work full time?
Let me rephrase the question and you tell me if I'm understanding
Yeah,
correctly. Like, what
yeah,
can employers do? Um, I think what I've seen, like right now, I'm also trying to find. Well, I don't, not also, but I'm trying to find a job like you in high school, and uh, I've seen employers write if you need accommodation, please let us know, things like that. I think that's a a great step to recognize that our applicants with very various abilities. I think that listening is very important. Like during our survey, we recognized that employers were very hard to get to reach to get them listening. So I feel that's also a very important thing, right? That you need to that it's important for them to realize that they may have things to work on terms in terms of accommodation or inclusion for youth of all abilities.
yeah, no, fair enough. So looking back at the survey, was there any actual responses in particular, like particular examples that you found surprising at all?
Um, I did. I think one of them was how the barriers or challenges that youth faced were um, like the perspective of a student was similar to the perspective of educators, which I don't know, for some reason, I thought it was going to be very different. I thought adults will think youth need this or that, and then youth will say, no, we need something totally different, right? But the very first, like on our top five challenges or barriers, the first two, I believe, matches. That was transportation and options. I believe there are not a lot of options or a lot of mm, um, I believe it was guidance and support. So that was very surprising, saying that schools are aware of the needs of youth and are trying to work on reducing these barriers and getting in touch with employers. I think I remember one teacher mentioning that it would be good if employers themselves saw the benefit of having co-op placements and youth of all abilities working in their workplace, so that they could reach out to the school instead of the school reaching out to them. So yeah, I think that was very surprising seeing that similarities.
You mentioned co-op. I kind of want to get on a personal experience of mine in university. Currently, as of this recording, my co-op program applications are open, like they're open for people to apply, but it's very restrictive. It's like you can only apply within this period that they're giving us. And
Mhm.
if we don't apply, we don't get in, we don't get the program, we don't get another chance. It's just you apply then or you don't apply at all. And the other thing that they mandate is you have all your first year courses done, or you have to explain yourself and explain how you're going to get them because they don't have time to deal with differing schedules. That's literally what they said in recording once. and
Mm,
that doesn't seem very inclusive. That doesn't really seem great. And that's my university's co-op program for my program,
mm,
which is in chemistry. Which, wow, that's shocking for me, because when I looked at other universities, their co-op programs are more flexible. You can register as soon as you go into university. There's more flexibility in when you can do them, how you do them, when you take your courses, when you don't. They're not as strict about that. So to touch a bit upon, we actually in some of our class had someone come in and do like an assessment of the program. And something I remember hearing from a lot of students in that sort of, collecting that survey on how to improve our program, which is sort of related to what we're talking about, not exactly, but there is a connection here, which I'll get to. And a lot of people in the class said there's not enough jobs in Toronto. There's not enough jobs in the co-op program. The co-op even like you get into the co-op program and you try and get jobs, there aren't really jobs. Even in university, and this was in university. For crying out loud. This
mm,
is like post-secondary where you were saying like 45% say they don't have difficulty, and yet some people still do have difficulty, as mentioned, like 45% still have difficulty. And it shows. Like it even showed in there. They were saying there's still like barriers, there's few jobs. It's hard to get your foot in the door. And
mm.
so what do you think about that? Like it in a chemistry program, like session where they're saying that sort of thing. What are your thoughts on that then?
Um, well, it's frustrating, I think, to be a student, right, with your dreams and hopes, and seeing that university um, does not have those opportunities for you, right? And I feel chemistry such not only important but such a big job market. I think, right? So yeah, I think it just a bit of a reflect of what we found in the survey, the lack of options, the and maybe some of I remember some of the students say maybe there are, but we just don't know where to find them. We don't know how to make us, with our skills and our studies and experiences, how to make us a good fit for that job, for the co-op placement. So it's frustrating, but yeah, but hopefully we're working towards making it better every day.
Oh, absolutely. That's the hope. That's always the hope that someone will listen and improve it. It's yeah, no, it's interesting that we had someone actually come in and try and take a survey that was mandated, like take a survey of the class. We had to do a survey and discuss things. And it was interesting. And it's just um it's something that's just sort of, I don't know. I find kind of sad that people feel like that, especially as you mentioned. Chemistry is an important job market, and
Mm,
it's so interesting that people can't find jobs when supposedly um, chemistry is is supposed to be something that's in demand or something that's needed.
right.
Like if you look at the different chemistries that there are, and it's just it fascinates me. And what I found overall, like I grew up in Northern Ontario, and the job market up there is sure limited, but there's not a lot of people up there replacing jobs. There's a lot of job
Mhm.
opportunities up there, and that's because no one wants to live up north. No one wants to go up
Right.
there, and everyone stays down south, takes up all the jobs. The job market gets harder to get in, and employers, because of that, they feel like they have to stay in a certain narrow-mindedness because they
Mm.
have to be selective of who they accept. And and that's sort of it strikes me as odd, that disparity. So it, is there a solution when that issue's in play? Is there a way to address that within this survey, do you think?
Mm, I do have to say that we did our survey in Windsor, so I feel
Mm,
that taking that into other places mm, could be different, right?
mm-hmm,
Yeah, but I think well, why not? Why not just making a survey and on different areas,
mm-hmm,
to see how does it look like, right? And
mm-hmm,
uh, but it's I feel it's a very complicated issue, to be honest, because you mentioned
mm-hmm,
people are moving to Toronto, for example. There are a lot of demand and not a lot of options, and then employers have this power of choosing. They feel they have this power of just choosing a very select group. Um, yeah, but that's what we try to show, at least in the survey, that there are more options, there are more solutions to just choosing this specific group of people, but looking outside of that, the little circle, and giving also trainings or accommodations if necessary, schedule like um, Mm, I'm missing the word schedules, like options, different schedule
mm-hmm,
options.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, yeah. And I think also maybe I mean, employers themselves. Maybe more,
mm-hmm,
some of them don't know about the importance and the benefits that comes with it. So yeah.
mm. So yeah, no, I just found that interesting, that's what's found. And just to add a bit more of my perspective to this, I know this was in Windsor, but I think it's important to discuss not only about Windsor, but bring this to a provincial discussion, because Windsor's sure a select group, but you do want to bring this conversation forward and further and wider, right? Like you want to branch out. And so
Right.
what I was told by a professor was, it's no longer about your resume, it's no longer about your cover letter, it's no longer about all of that. It's about your connections. It's about who you know, rather than rather than are you qualified. Like, part of it is you have to be qualified, and part of it is still that. But a lot of it is making connections to get those opportunities, and not a lot of people will know how to do that. So do
Right.
you think that's sort of a step in the wrong direction, or is there a
I
way where advocacy can creep in there?
I think it's very interesting that you mentioned that connections, because and I like, for most of the time I don't like to compare my life in Colombia and my life here. But in Colombia, that's something we have a word for that, for how that for you to enter to that workplace, you need to have connections. And we say this specific word. Um and so of course when I came here, I I don't want to say I expected, but I dreamed, I hope that it was going to be different, right? That you were more looked to your qualifications, your experience, rather than who you know. Because coming to a place where you don't know anyone, it's going to be really hard to get a job, right? To come into a new place, a new house, a new. So yeah, I get why that is very frustrating, um, and very discouraging, I feel, for younger generations. Mm, um, I also heard that sometimes it's also not enough to just having an undergraduate degree, but you need now more things, um, more skills, more qualification, more studies. And then it's you have the barrier of economic or financial barriers coming into play and all of that. So yeah, so it's a very complex thing that we just try to grasp with the survey. It was a bit of an input there with the survey, and taking a small glance into a very complex and with a lot of branches issue. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that's interesting. You mentioned that because that's actually a prevalent issue within the sciences is you need further qualifications to get a job. You don't just need a bachelor degree anymore. You also need a master's now for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of jobs. And they expect you to have at least a minimum of that nowadays. It's like if you don't have that, you don't have enough experience to do certain jobs. And it's
Yeah.
interesting. Um, the other interesting I found is before going to Toronto Metropolitan University, I was out in Saskatchewan, going to University of Saskatchewan as an out of province student. And here's an interesting fact about let's say financial disability programs such as Ontario Disability Support Program versus the Saskatchewan equivalent. The Saskatchewan equivalent will cover you when you're not in university. They will not cover you when you're in university. They won't give you any help living in residence while you're in university in Saskatchewan living with a disability. They won't. They do not. But the interesting thing is, as an out of province student going to Saskatchewan for university, ODSP actually I was grateful enough. It was generous enough. They actually will cover a student who's out of province in residence to cover to help with the costs of living in residence. They will actually still cover that. and
Wow.
and that just blew my mind. I'm like, wow. So the Ontario program will cover its citizens better than the Saskatchewan program, and it's just it's interesting that it they actually covered out of province students, whereas a province doesn't. And I guess that sort of has to deal with the fact that Ontario has more people and they have more taxes, so they have more funding, whereas Saskatchewan has less people and less taxes, so it's less funded. So it's sort of interesting that people in Ontario, like with disability, it's still, I'll be honest, it's still not a perfect system. It's still not great. There's still people on the wait list in Ontario. There's still there's still all these issues. Or if you
Mhm.
step back, if you go to another province and look at the perspective, Ontario is doing better than some
Better.
provinces. I'm not saying it's perfect, but like that's interesting that there are other provinces that aren't doing the same. Like, and
Hmm.
it's interesting that each province has their own programs and their own problems. I don't know. I just found that interesting because you mentioned financial aid. So I figured I'd bring that up. That's interesting.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I think the taxes also play a huge role in how the um like public funded organizations can work, and I do think this just to show that that we're walking the in a good, right, in the good direction, at least that we're not going backwards but forward, into a better programs, better systems.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think back again in to Colombia, right? That's just a huge part of my
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
So yeah, I see a lot more opportunities here than I saw back home. So I'm just grateful for just being here and having the opportunity to talk about my experience and how different it
Mhm.
is looking for a job here and looking for a job at at home, right, in Colombia. So I do think
Mhm.
uh although the system is not perfect and by no means we should like ignore the issues, but I do think that it's nice sometimes to see the good aspects of it compared to some other places where there are a lot of other um, uh, urgent matters, let's say, to work on. So yeah.
Yeah. So if you don't have to answer, you don't have to answer this. If you don't mind me asking though, if you know, like, what are the disability programs like in Colombia? Do they have a similar program where people with disabilities get support from the government, or do they not?
Well, to be honest, like during my like childhood
Mhm.
and like youth, I remember that my school had one classroom with some people with disabilities, but it wasn't very strong. I remember when I came here, uh, people with disabilities came into the classroom and interacted with yeah with teachers, with other students, and so on. I think in Colombia there was this division uh, that yeah very unhealthy division for like both of us. So yeah, I never heard any programs um, that try to join, because I think that's what I like about Reaction for Inclusion is that it's not only a program for youth, it's a program for youth of all abilities, for all their voices to be heard. I think in Colombia we still have this division between youth or children or adults with disabilities and those without. So yeah, yeah, I actually have homework to search. Maybe things have changed in this years that I haven't been home at home, but yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, not a problem. I just figured if you're open to discussing some of that, I figured I would ask. I thought that'd be a perfect opportunity to sort of make connections because yeah, no, this topic is bigger as mentioned than both of us, and just this one survey really helps sort of grow the topic, grow the conversation, and that's sort of the idea behind this podcast. So I'd like to ask, what do you think like the youth advisory committee could do to sort of raise these issues within Ontario, and maybe even by raising them in Ontario, inspire other places to raise the issues?
Um. Well, I think this conversation is a very an awesome step into improving the system that and reducing the barriers. I feel there is one thing uh, that really that really I had on my mind when I was doing the survey, working with community living Windsor, and it was that I feel this organization have the I don't want to use the word power, but the ability maybe or the connections to get in touch with employers. I feel during our survey it was really hard to get employers to fill the survey. I remember we had like 3 or 4 maximum, so it was really hard to get their perspective on the issue. And as we mentioned, um um like hearing their side of the story, and giving them the opportunity to learn about these issues that are important for youth. So I think making partnerships with employers, searching out employers, of course, these conversations, um, and I think um, maybe once the partnership with employers are made, maybe education and training uh, for them to realize the importance and the benefits for having a diverse workplace. Yeah.
Oh, that
Mhm.
that actually sounds like all great ideas. I have to say I agree. Like that's those steps are the ones that need to be taken forward. There needs to be really a lot more conversation, a lot more work from Yak to bring this forward. It's I guess to use the sport metaphor, it's like you're running it towards the touchdown line, but you're not quite there yet. You're sort of you're passing the ball along, you're getting it forward, but you're not quite at the goal yet. You're not quite at the end point yet. Um,
Ma- Sorry, one more thing. Maybe also in terms of some of the things that Yak can do. I believe we also talked during while we make the survey and the infographic that it would be really nice to see how different is the experience of youth of all abilities across Ontario, right? So um, reaching out to schools, to students to make their own surveys and make their research, and find what are the challenges and barriers that they find when trying to search and enter the workplace. Um, yeah, so maybe um, um, empowering those surveys and people to make their own research.
I just was going to tie it back to universities. Do you think um to tie it in, do you think Yak could work with university researchers on this? Do you think university researchers like sociologists or like humanitarian studies, like those who do research sort of like this, looking at societal trends and stuff, do you think they have a role in this, or do you think not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think well, I think the 3 most important players into these barriers and challenges are students themselves, educators, and employers. So working with the 3 of them will be ideal, right? Working with employers, educators, researchers, and students. um I do, like in my experience, I feel we need more support on talking with employers, because I feel there is a disconnection. Like students and employers think like they they agree on what are the challenges, but employers seem to don't know them, uh or don't know how to um approach them. So yeah, I think it's very important to talk with universities. Also a very huge um universities are a very huge, not a very huge opportunity to make not only skills but experiences and job placements. So yeah, so it's also very important, but also to employers, yes.
No, absolutely. And yeah, it just I think it all ties back together to we should talk to people. We should have conversations like this, reach out more, branch out more, um, get people who do this sort of research involved because they can, present their work. They can, publish scholarly articles on this, which can then be reviewed by others, which then actually show statistics behind it, which actually, can inform policy at the government level. Because a lot of governments want to see studies, they want to see, the percentages, they want to see, the hardcore
Mm,
facts and
the
stuff like
facts.
that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like which I mean, if you're a government trying to run a country or a province or a city or whatever, you do want to, study it. You want to make sure you got the facts behind it. You got like the statistics. You want to make sure you're making an informed decision. I
Right.
at least think I think that's reasonable, right? Like you
Yeah,
want to know
completely.
you're making the right decision.
And I feel that's where the survey comes from, where you can find those facts and they just reveal themselves. You just ask people as students and they will tell you, and then you have, well, a survey for many years to talk about these issues and hopefully make, yeah, the governments hear them and solve them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's sort of what I want to tie in here. Is uh, as much as some people may not like the government has a role here to play in, you know, making things better. That doesn't mean per se the government should step in on everything, but they do have a role to play in at least legislating. So they could,
Exactly.
yeah, legislate something, maybe not a full intervention, but they can legislate something and get things done. So it's sort of like having that bigger conversation, having these small steps that lead to that bigger conversation and lead to change is important in advocacy. And so I was going to ask you, do you think advocacy has a role in it? And if so, is there any ideas you have behind the advocacy that should be done?
Um, yeah, I definitely think advocacy has a role. I think I wouldn't be here if I didn't find this group of advocacy youth that were working for um, a more inclusive society. So yeah, it has a role definitely, and um, in my experience, I'm very new, I would say, to advocacy, but uh, especially right now, social media is a big thing. And we tried a bit, we tried to um, create like a community, I feel. But it was hard for us. So yeah, I think one of the ways is trying to move this conversation into social media where you can reach more people, uh, even employers or schools themselves. And yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I'd agree. That's honestly a good way to do it. You said you're fairly new to this. Are you liking self advocacy so far?
Yes, I did. Well, I said I was new to this because I started like around 2021, 2021. Um, and with the change project and all the thing that so our change project was called Voices of Tomorrow, and with all the thing that came with Voices of Tomorrow was really beautiful to see how much of support, of passion, of effort, um, a lot of people, a lot of youth and other allies were making. So it was very, I feel very fortunate to be part of it. And I would say that one of the things that Reaction for Inclusion did for me was, and they actually, it's a belief statement that they have, is creating um, meaningful relationships, um, stop or prevents community isolation. So that's what I found in Reaction for Inclusion, feeling a community and not very um, feeling that I belong it here, that I belong at right, working here and having a life here. So yeah.
I think that's a great way to end this off. That's a great positive note. I want to thank you for being on this podcast, having this great conversation. Um, and seriously, again, thank you for being here. Thank you for talking about your survey. And please keep up the good work.
Thank you for having me. It was a very, very nice experience. Yeah, and you too.